Hello. Now I am having some work done today on my electric. So sadly, we're not connected to the internet. So I'm hoping that the connection's all right. I can see myself on there. We'll see how it goes, and if this doesn't work, I'll redo it later on if it is not clear, because I'm running this through my phone. My connection seems fine on my laptop, but StreamYard is saying it's slow, so I have no idea why. What we're going to talk about today is what to do if your loved one has a lapse. And for those of you that don't know me, I am Victoria Seed, and I help families who are affected by a loved one's drug or alcohol use to reduce their stress so that they can live a better life. And I do this by teaching really effective strategies to cope that work to do just that. I have a membership, I have one-to-one programs, and I'm just in the process of creating an online group work program, which I also deliver live as well. And I can help you too. So if you are living in this situation, please don't be alone. So first of all, if you want my top tips to family recovery, please head over to this link. Let's see if it comes up. Yeah, vestaapproach.co.uk/freebie. Now, over on my website, you can grab that, and there's also lots of blogs, lots and lots of information. So do go and check that out as well, because whatever you're stuck with, there should be something there. And you can also check out my Facebook and YouTube pages for all of the other videos as well. All right, so let's get into it. When a loved one has a lapse, it can be really, really difficult, upsetting. You might feel let down. But to be honest with you, when people have a lapse, it happens, and I can relate to that by the fact that I've been on a diet pretty much for 22 years. So I don't want your loved ones to be using their substances for that long if they haven't already, without seeing some kind of change. But I try and cut down the sugar and things like that, and it's very, very difficult to do. And the reason why that's difficult to do is because it's not that important to me. And my friend Sam Adams made me realise that on a live we did a while ago. So what do you do then if your loved one has a lapse? So first of all, the difference between a lapse and a relapse, but we'll kind of cover both today. A lapse could be a temporary lapse where your loved one has used their substance, whether it's drugs or alcohol, but quite quickly regrets that, wants to change, talks about changing, gets back on track with their recovery, abstinence, or whatever they call it. A lapse is where your loved one has reverted back to old behaviours. So they've just gone back to that behaviour that they had before, and it doesn't look like there's any inclination to change. So what you need to do then, first of all, number one, is everybody safe? So consider this: is your loved one safe? Has anything happened where they've put themselves into a difficult situation? Are there any mental health issues? Are you safe? Are your children safe? Is everyone else safe? So one thing I would say that has come up recently is that if a loved one is threatening to self-harm or hurt somebody else, you must report that in as soon as possible, even if they've done it a million times before, unless you are trained in suicide prevention and things like that, and you can do that work, which doesn't always work when it's your own family. But please make sure that you're using your services, your emergency services, and don't you worry about the consequences of that, because that is a consequence of your loved one's behaviour. If your loved one is threatening to hurt themselves or others, then obviously you're going to get services involved, but people kind of hold back from that because they're worried about the consequence for the loved one, but then you're not worrying about the consequence for you of having to manage that. Or like if they did follow through with it and you hadn't taken the action, and I am not about making anybody feel guilty here, but that could happen. So number one is everyone safe, absolute priority. Number two, don't panic. When we panic, we don't think clearly. So of course you're going to panic, you're going to feel anxiety, you're going to feel worry, you're going to be stressed, right? Those are real feelings, and I'm not telling you not to feel them. You got to feel them, but reacting on the basis of those feelings isn't going to get you anywhere. So take those deep breaths, take a step out of the situation, because in my world we withdraw from your loved one's substance use so that you can switch on that strategic part of your brain and start thinking strategically. All right, go and speak to your own support network before you respond if you need to. So if you've got a worker, if you've got a forum that you're in, if you're in my world, come and speak to us. If you've got a good friend that you confide in or family member, go and have a chat to them. You know, they aren't necessarily going to know the answers to this. But sometimes it's just good to say things out loud, or even type them out or write it out in your journal if you're a journaler. Always respond and don't react, and just remember that it isn't the end of the world if your loved one has a lapse, because chances are if they've lapsed or relapsed, they've had a period of time where they've managed not to use their substance. And what this is about is trying to increase the length of that time, you know, support your loved one through that journey, but most of all, protect yourselves. And in drug and alcohol work, we actually focus a lot on relapse prevention, because we know that lapses and relapses happen. So we support people around trying to avoid that. And if you can do some of that too, in a family context, and that's great. And remember to just keep those emotions under control. Number three, don't walk on eggshells. So what happens is that family members will get stressed, worried, emotional and upset, which is perfectly reasonable. However, then they don't often feel strong enough to say, this is what's happened, this is how I feel, and this is what I need. And that is what assertiveness is. You know, you're doing it in a respectful, caring, kind and compassionate manner for yourself and for the other person. So when you feel that really strong emotion and anger and rage, that's not the time to be doing this. You've got to kind of focus on self-soothing and self-settling, and then have these difficult conversations. And they are difficult, but the more you have them, the easier it will get. So encourage your loved one, you know, hopefully, and remind them how well they've done so far. Like I just said, they've had a period of time where they haven't used. Point out what you're observing to your loved one. Don't be passive, don't be aggressive. It will lead to conflict if you're either of those things, or if you're passive, your needs just are never going to be met. Have a conversation, which we'll talk about in the next point, and they are able to get back on track. People do it every day. So if you get in a mindset of things are never going to change, then things are probably never going to change, because your loved one will believe that as well. Not that it's your fault, but if everyone's like not got any belief in the change, then nothing's going to change. They have not ruined everything. They've just made a mistake or an error. And it might not feel like a mistake when you know that it's planned in a way, that they've used a substance and there's been a number of choices and decisions around that. But, you know, all of that is connected to, you know, making a bad decision. Process things with them calmly if you can, and don't engage with them when they are intoxicated. So number four, don't criticize. Praise your loved one for how well they've done. Explore the learning that they've had during their period of abstinence or recovery. Be hopeful. They already feel like shit. They are not starting from scratch. They've got all of that previous learning to build on. They still have that time of recovery that they've just had. The positive feelings they've felt in improving their relationship with you are there for you to be able to build on as an affected family member, friend or partner. But tell them how you feel. Your relationship is two-way. It's not all about them and their problems. You are experiencing this as well. And always encourage them to get support if they're not already, or to access the support they're getting. Because I'm working with a lot of people where the loved ones are already accessing support, but they are not utilizing it. So always just refer back. Can you go and speak to your alcohol worker? Can you go and speak to your counsellor? Can you talk this through with them? Come and let me know how it goes, if you can. But please, it's really important that you talk to them about this lapse for your sake, you know. And then number 5, don't get stuck back in the cycle. So stay ahead of that drug or alcohol. Keep using the strategies I teach, which is rewarding your loved one when they're sober, withdrawing when they're intoxicated, using positive communication, always setting those healthy boundaries, reduce or stop enabling behaviors, but be a helpful helper as well at the same time. And remember that helping does include supporting a loved one to get back on track with the drinking or drug use. So when it comes to this, don't worry about enabling when you're trying to get your loved one back on track and trying to get them to access support and services. Don't worry about that too much, because that's helping behaviors, that's not enabling. So that's it really. So just to recap, is everyone safe? Don't panic, don't walk on eggshells, don't criticize, and don't get stuck back in that cycle of chaos. So remember, you can go and grab my top 10 tips, 10 ways to family recovery at vestaapproach.co.uk/freebie. And if you have any comments to make, please drop them below, or drop me a private message if you need any help and support. I'm going to leave it there because my electricians are waiting to carry on the work. So take care and have a good week.